Alright, so this is part 3 of my Python for Hackers series. In this video, we are going to learn some basic Python syntax, including indentation, comments, variables, and constants. If you're here and haven't watched the earlier videos of this series, make sure to check them out first. Now let me open my Visual Studio Code and quickly set up a new project. I'll also create an example Python file. Before writing anything, let me tell you something very important. Indentation. This is something you must pay attention to when writing Python code. As I mentioned in previous videos, Python is a simple and easy to understand language. Unlike other languages, you don't need to use curly braces or statement terminators like semicolon at the end of every line. Instead, Python uses indentation to define blocks of code. Let's understand this with an example that you can see on your screen. Here's a simple Python program using an if statement to print hello world on the screen if the number variable has the value 3. Notice the spaces at the start of the second line. These spaces are called indentation. These spaces tell the Python interpreter that the print statement is part of the if block. If we don't use indentation, Python won't understand how the statements are connected. Let's run this program and see what happens. You can see that hello world is printed on the screen. Now let's remove the indentation and run the program again. You'll notice that it throws an indentation error. This is Python's way of telling you that you need proper indentation for your code to work. If you're using a good IDE like VS Code, you don't need to worry much about indentation. The editor will handle it for you automatically when you press enter. A quick note, some programming languages use curly braces to define code blocks instead of relying on spaces. However, Python doesn't support curly braces for this purpose. Indentation is mandatory and makes your code cleaner and more readable. Comments are very useful in programming. They are lines of code that are ignored by the interpreter. Programmers use comments to explain what the code does, either for others or for their future selves. Imagine reading your own program after a few months and feeling like you're decoding an alien language. Comments save you from that. Python supports two types of comments. The first is single-line comments, which start with the number sign symbol. For example, you can write number sign, this is a comment, and the interpreter will ignore it. You can also use comments at the end of a line to explain what the code does. The second type is docstrings, which are enclosed in triple quotes and can span multiple lines. Docstrings are often used to document functions or explain code, though most programmers prefer single-line comments because they're quicker and cleaner. Now let's talk about variables and data types. A variable is like a container that stores data. Think of it as a bucket where you can put something and retrieve it later when needed. In Python, variables are dynamically typed, meaning you don't need to specify their data type. Python automatically figures it out based on the value you assign. For example, if you write name equals something, the variable name stores a string because the value is enclosed in double quotes. Similarly, if you write age equals 17, Python knows it's an integer because it's a whole number. If you write height equals 177.8, Python recognizes it as a float because it has a decimal point. Unlike older programming languages, you don't need to declare the data type explicitly. Python does it for you. Finally, let's discuss constants. Constants are similar to variables, but their values shouldn't change during the program's execution. While Python doesn't have built-in support for constants, we use a naming convention to indicate them. Constants are written in all capital letters. For example, pi equals 3.14 something or gravity equals 9.8. Even though these are just variables, writing them in capital letters tells other programmers and yourself that their values shouldn't be changed. Constants are especially useful for storing values like pi or gravity that remain the same throughout the program.